fall of the Third Reich, the end of Hitler's regime. By late 1944, the tide of World War II had irrevocably turned against Nazi Germany. The Allied forces, often called the West, had landed in France and were pushing eastward. Simultaneously, the massive Soviet Red Army, the East, was relentlessly driving the Nazis back toward Berlin. Germany was caught in a deadly vice. Adolf Hitler, secluded in his underground bunker beneath Berlin, refused to accept defeat. He believed in imaginary armies and ordered impossible defenses, sacrificing his own troops and civilians to stall the inevitable. His authority was crumbling, and his generals knew the war was lost. In January 1945, the Soviet forces launched their final massive offensive across Poland and into German territory. They were driven by years of brutal warfare and the liberation of concentration camps like Auschwitz, revealing the horrific scale of Nazi crimes. The Eastern Front became a desperate race toward the capital. On the Western Front, Allied armies crossed the Rhine River in March 1945, a major strategic barrier. British, American, and French troops systematically cleared the last German defenses in the West. Their synchronized push from the West and East was intended to meet the Soviets and officially divide the collapsing country. As the Allied armies closed in, Hitler's capital, Berlin, became the final fortress. The once proud city was transformed into a rubble heap. Old men, teenagers, and even children were conscripted into the Volkssturm, People's Storm, for a hopeless last stand against the Soviet advance. The Battle of Berlin began in mid-April. Soviet artillery pounded the city mercilessly. Street by street, building by building, the Red Army fought its way toward the symbolic heart of the regime, the Reichstag, the German parliament building. Deep within the Führer bunker, paranoia and despair reigned. Hitler knew the war was over, and his capture was imminent. On April 30th, 1945, with Soviet troops only blocks away, Hitler and his longtime companion, Eva Braun, committed suicide. His tyranny ended not on the battlefield, but in the isolation of a subterranean room. Before his death, Hitler had designated Admiral Karl Donitz as the new head of state. Donitz's immediate and grim task was not to fight, but to attempt to organize an orderly surrender and save as many German soldiers and civilians as possible from the destruction. The final unconditional surrender of all German forces was officially signed on May 7, 1945, in Reims, France, by German military representatives. The surrender was ratified in Berlin the following day. The long nightmare of the war in Europe was finally over. May 8th became known as Victory in Europe Day, or VE Day. The collapse of Nazi Germany ended one of the darkest and most destructive chapters in world history. The massive effort of the Allied nations fighting for freedom against tyranny had prevailed, and the immense task of rebuilding and seeking justice for the war's criminals began.